Here we go. Okay. All right. So, if you can remember some of those questions, I think we can remember a good bit. One of the questions was, and who was it that asked the question about the books? Do you remember?
About
I think it was Jeff. I'm not sure.
the book for
beginners.
yes.
Okay.
I believe that was Jeff.
So I pulled a few things off the bookshelf to kind of share with you guys as far as, and these are mostly jiu-jitsu related. I think there's a lot of, I think there's a lot of materials out there. There's a lot of books that are great for mindset and things like that that aren't necessarily even just jiu-jitsu specific. But as far as guides to like the beginner who wants more information to kind of figure out what to expect and all that sort of thing, there's a ton of stuff on YouTube, as you guys already know, and almost too much. Like it's difficult to kind of pick and choose what you should be paying attention to, because there's just a ton of information that's just puked out there. And of course you're limited to a certain degree if you don't have a training partner to train with at home. But all these resources are still good. I like some of them because there's a lot of history to them. VJ can attest to this. History is sort of a tricky thing. It's like whoever got to write the book, can kind of, you just never know. But there's a lot of good resources out there. It's just trying to pick and choose what's best. My favorite ones I've kind of brought out as far as beginners go, and I like all of these pretty well. So I'll explain what I like about them, and and then what I don't. So I'll start with Gracie, right? It's the one book that he wrote as far as the technique goes at the beginning, and this is basically centered on his 40-lesson curriculum. So if you were his student, he would want you to know these 40 lessons, okay? And I think these may have changed over time, but it's a really well done book as far as technique is concerned, and basic techniques. So I do like it. There's a little bit of history at the beginning, and I think it's a it's a beautiful book. It's very well laid out. It's extremely well done. It's not cheap if you can find a copy, but if you're able to, I would say definitely get a copy of this if you can. And sorry, I've got a 6-year-old walking in on our live video whose face is painted like a cat. Never mind that. It's kind of crazy here at the bunker. But yeah, if you can get your hands on that, this is a great book. I was just flipping through it the other day. Another one that I like a lot is this one here. This is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Theory and Technique by Renzo and Royler Gracie. What I like about this one is very similar to, there's a little bit of history here as well, and it's at least a fun read. It gives you a good basic history of the art and kind of the basics of the art, like the belt system, even the point system in competition, the mindset, training. There's a lot of good advice at the beginning section of this book, and then what it does is it goes through, the second part is kind of technique, like what you want to know, basics of like blue belt technique. Now this is not fully comprehensive, but it's a very well laid out book. They have blue belt, they've got a section for purple belt, and then brown belt, and then back here as far as black belt. And keep in mind that a lot of the techniques that you learn at blue belt are probably the majority of the techniques that you're going to be applying at black belt. You're just going to be able to apply them in a much more effective manner, okay? You're gonna have better setups, you're gonna have better movement, better intuitive, as long as you can keep yourself healthy. So I think as far as basic techniques and theory and technique, this is a good start. I think it's a very well done book. And keep in mind, there's just a million books out there. But trusted resources, Renzo and Royler are amazing. This one is laid out very similar. This is one of Royler's black belts, Sauer Bear, multiple-time world champion. Him and his brother Shanji both. This is very, very well laid out, and it's laid out in a similar fashion. You know, sort of, you know, blue belt, or actually it starts with white belt, and it kind of moves on, and it has different sections. Very well done, and I'm a big fan of Salo. I think he's one of the best as far as the competition jiu-jitsu goes. One of the best strategists, if not the best strategist of all time, as far as an instructor for that specific part of jiu-jitsu. I mean, he's amazing, and all around good guy, and very intelligent. And he's got some great stories in here about Elio, and I think as far as he lays out, I think what he does really well in here, and I'll do a little bit of a video on this later, just as a separate thing. You know, he talks a lot about his experience with Elio and the concept of white belt. I think he lays out the idea of the goal of the white belt right there. That's it. Survival. Okay, and I think this part of the book I think is my favorite part, and it's really well laid out. And I think he expresses it very, very well, and talks about his influence from Elio and the rest of the Gracies. Very well done book. Salo's incredible. So that's a very, very good book. This one I enjoyed a great deal. Hinzo and John Danaher. John Danaher, when they released this book, was not very well known. He's one of Hinzo's black belts. He was I don't know if he actually ended up getting his PhD in philosophy, but he was a PhD student, but very, very good student of jiu-jitsu, and obviously now very, very good grappling coach as well. But he did a good job of putting this together, and I think the thing that's different about this one is he goes a little bit deeper into the history and the philosophy of jiu-jitsu. This is actually, it's less technique based and more concept based. And I think as far as a book goes, that's probably more helpful. So I would say I really enjoyed this book a lot. It was an enjoyable read. There were parts of it that seemed almost like a college textbook, but at the same point, I think it's very well done. So I still enjoyed it very much. So those are probably my top recommendations as far as what I could pull off my bookshelf. There's a lot of, I mean, if you go back further, I mean, there's books, you know, by Jigoro Kano that are very, very good, and some of his students. And if you go back and look up some of I enjoy the history part of it. So the further you go back, I mean, you kind of see, you can kind of find out for yourself how this art developed. And there's a lot to be learned from that.
Dustin said the Elio book is $244 on Amazon.
Yeah. So I have a guy. Just saying, reach out to me, Dustin. I can get you hooked up. Okay. I have a few of those copies myself. I'd like to pass them on to my children. I was lucky enough. Well, say lucky, but one of the biggest purchases that I had was back in the day. I talked to my wife. This is back when we had just nothing. I mean, we were living in an apartment when they released this book. You know, building a family and just, you know, we weren't poor, but you know what I mean, like, did not have a whole lot of money just to throw on a book. When they released that book, I think the base level was $75, and but they offered up a special edition, and you could have Elio sign it. It was one of 500 copies, and how much was it? $250?
I don't remember. You might not have even told me.
Yep, I may not have, but I think I did. I think we discussed it, and I bought that book. But I'm glad I did, because it's personalized to me. It has his signature on it, and I was lucky enough to have the opportunity to meet Elio Gracie and you know, and just to train with his sons has been a real honor, you know. So I'm glad I have the book. I bought an extra book just so I could read it and not, you know, mess it up. So it's pretty cool. I'll break that out sometime. But
so there's a couple of non-technique questions
Sure.
on YouTube. Do you want to address those now?
Yeah, why not? Let's do it.
So first one is, what do you think about grappling dummies? And what do you suggest if the grappling dummy keeps beating you?
If the grappling dummy keeps beating you, I think, I don't know, you might have some troubles coming back Off the, yeah. I've never been a fan. I just, there's a lot, I suppose there's a lot you can do with them, you know, but I think you could probably just grab like this heavy bag over here. You could do a lot of the same things on that. I don't know. Maybe this comes from a point of privilege right now because I have training partners that I'm sort of stuck at home with. You know what I mean? Like she likes training. My son, my 18-year-old son, is really getting into it now, and he's getting better and enjoys it. So I'm lucky to actually have training partners where I can still help teach and help develop them, but at the same time keep myself sharp and just move. But even when I didn't, if I even knew how to build them, I don't know. I think there are definitely things that you can do, but again, it's still very limited. I think, you know, I suppose one thing you can do is drill, like, you know, shooting collar chokes and things like that. To be honest with you, I just find them very boring. I just can't. I'd rather lift weights. I mean, yes, there are some things you can do, you know, movement-wise, like taking arm locks, things like that. It's just so much different than an actual human being. I think many of those movements you can do without a dummy. And I think, yeah, that's just my personal opinion. If you don't have a partner and you're still developing techniques, yeah, absolutely, I'm sure you can utilize it, but they're just not my favorite thing. I'm not a fan, you know. So I don't know. I don't know if I would. It's not worth it to me to take the time to build one, and I certainly wouldn't want to buy one right now. I don't think they're cheap. So that's my opinion.
And Stephen wants to know why the high dropout rate in the jiu-jitsu community, and why does it take a decade to get a black belt?
Well, there's a number of reasons for that, Steve. Honestly, Stephen, right?
Stephen.
Yeah, Stephen. Thanks for the question. I think there's a number of reasons for that. I think that a lot of it depends on the culture of the school and the student coming in. Okay, so there's going to be environments, and not that there's a right or wrong about this. It's not a right or wrong scenario. It's just that you may have somebody, like say my wife, who thought maybe I might be interested in it, and come into a culture and environment that may be healthy for certain people, high-level athletes, whatever. Let's say it's a very high competition-oriented gym, okay? That may not be the best place for one particular person. So it might not be that jiu-jitsu is not for them, or it might not be that, you know, they can't cut it or whatever. It might just be that that's not the expression or the place that's best for them, okay? So you have a lot of different cultures, a lot of different environments, and you know, you go to some places and they're very, very heavy competition oriented, and they're going to train hard right from day one, and it's either sink or swim. It's not necessarily that that's a wrong thing. It's just that that's the way that's what their focus is, right? So, you know, there's a difference between a spinning class and a CrossFit class, right? They both may be challenging, but one may be more appealing to one person as opposed to the other. It's kind of what they're into. So I can't speak for her, but I think when I first introduced her to jiu-jitsu, I don't think the room or the culture was as inviting to women as it is now. It wasn't as it's just we've learned a lot, you know what I mean, and we've learned how to be able to, I guess, improve and increase knowledge, but at the same time, and capability, but at the same time have an opportunity for folks who are just really intimidated, or they're not ready for that full-on hardcore training mentality or modality, so to speak. And people can build up to that, but they may need a different entry than a lot of people. So I think it really comes down to just I think it's very much a cultural thing. So you could have somebody like her go into one place and have a very terrible experience, and go into another place and have a very pleasant experience. And I think if you start out with the if you start with a good experience and you get hooked, eventually, little by little, you become more and more, you become better at it. You learn how to challenge yourself more. You push yourself more to the point where, she started coming in just started doing privates with me recently,
For
6-8
almost
months
a
ago.
year.
Yeah, for a good while. So it was just that's who she was comfortable with, and then eventually met some friends, somebody her own size she could train with, drill with, that she was comfortable with, and little by little, the student starts to get over the anxieties of whatever it may be. Man, this person's bigger than me. They smash me, whatever, and then they start to learn, and then they start getting tougher and tougher, and then at some point it's just like, okay, I can handle any class I go to. But we developed a fundamentals curriculum designed specifically for the beginner, and then we found out, like, you know what? We need to break that down even a little bit further. And I see Mike Casey's on here. He was actually a big influence for me as far as developing curriculum. Maybe we need to go back even further, not to dumb it down, but to make it simpler, right? The whole concept, the whole idea is that this stuff is simple, and it you have to learn it in a specific way, and then be comfortable enough to keep coming back. And I think little by little, people just get more and more comfortable in the room, and they start challenging themselves. The discipline has to come from yourself, right? As a coach, if I'm yelling at somebody to discipline them, like I've already lost it, right? If they're not self-disciplined, they're not going to do the work. They're not gonna push themselves to go to that next harder class. But if I encourage them little by little, and they feel that confidence grow and the skills grow, if they can get to a certain point, man, now they can do anything they want, and then they can get to black belt. Why does it take 10 years? I'll try to answer that question too. It doesn't always take 10 years. Some people get it less. It's a mix of dedication, right, and ability. And ability is not just physical, but cognitively, right? It's a mix of all those things, right? In your, I don't want to call it indomitable spirit. It sounds a little bit too traditional martial artsy. But I think perseverance. I think perseverance is the quality that will get anybody through that, right? It took me 12 years, but things were different then. I didn't see a black belt but maybe once every 3 to 6 months. I uprooted myself and moved an hour and a half away to live in Columbus so that I could train 4 times a week, because they had 4 classes a week with a blue belt, a 2-stripe blue belt. And that's what I had to do to gain the knowledge. So that was, I think it's just, there's a broad reason why, it's just, that 10 years is probably still close to average for most people, but a lot of it's if you can only dedicate, let's say you start this thing at 30 years old, all right, and maybe you can only carve out 2-3 nights a week. Well, that's a lot different than the 20-year-old who can do it every day of the week, okay? And you're not going to heal as quickly as the 20-year-old, maybe not, you know what I mean? And so there's just a lot of factors involved with that. So I think that's why the 10 years is probably the average. But you've got folks that, I've had guys that have gotten to black belt in 8 years, so it's definitely possible. And they were legit black belts, right? So it's definitely possible. It's just that not everybody's going to have the same ability to have the same dedication. So that's my thought on that. All right, where are we at?
No other questions over here, just a few comments, but
Okay.
But Casey did have the question about
The deep dive.
yes.
Oh man. All right.
And then Justin was asking about counter to the over-under pass. Is that the same thing Justin was asking about earlier, or is that different?
It's different. So the over-under pass is where you're controlling your over top of one side and you're underneath the other leg. Okay. The double under is where you're coming in under both, and eventually you're going to connect your hands, stack them up, and stack. So that one I will spare you. I don't want to smash your face into the ground, but I've got a YouTube video on that. So and I learned it on the side of the mat. I just posted a picture of my first tournament in California back in 1996. I went out there and I competed. That's a story for another time. But I picked that technique up on the side of the mat from Barrett Yoshida. He was one of the best guys on our team at the time. He was phenomenal. He went out and he just smoked all the blue belts. It was ridiculous. Helson showed up with one guy from Hawaii, and he just smoked everybody. And it was really fun to watch. He beat some really big guys and really talented guys. I mean, he's just a talented guy. I mean, one of the best American grapplers for sure. And super nice. Like, he showed me that technique on the side of the mat. And so I never forgot it, because I thought it was like, that was really cool. So that's on our YouTube channel. Look it up. I think it's counter to double under stack pass or something. So the over under pass, if we have time, we'll get into that. But let's talk about what Casey was talking about, the inverted, I keep messing them up, inverted triangle.
I'm pretty sure that's what she said.
I'm going to move this out of the way so we don't kick our computers. All right? Do you need to deal
Sorry.
with that?
Yeah, I have.
Sorry.
I'm not trying to be that person that's on my phone, but I have somebody shopping for groceries for us right now, and with
It's
a
YouTube
big
Live.
family.
Also,
Yeah, with the
we
big
can't
family,
edit this out.
It's not a small order, and they're out of a lot of stuff.
yeah.
So
So, story time while my wife deals with the
I'm
grocery delivery. All right. Okay. So the inverted triangle, and I get mixed up with this all the time because there's reverse triangle. So this is how I would, and then there's arm triangle. So this is how I would. This is what I would call the regular triangle. This is what because I think some people get mixed up when it comes to the terminology. This is what I refer to as the reverse triangle. Still a triangle, but in reverse. And then I would say, for me, this is what I would call the inverted triangle. Okay, so here, like this. All right. Now there's a lot of ways of setting it up, but to finish the choke, it's not always that easy to finish. I'm going to scoot out this way a little bit to make it a little bit easier on your body there. So when I make the figure 4, to finish the choke, I can come underneath. If you're flexible enough, this is actually, if you watch I forget which year it was, but Braulio Stima finished Galval with this choke. Fantastic, because not too many people can tap out to Galval. But it's here and it's this. So I come on this side of the elbow and I grab here and I can squeeze. So if you could reach that, I don't normally do that because my legs are so long, but you can definitely finish the choke even if you can just hold this, okay? Now, there's a lot of attacks here. I've gone over some of those in some of the other videos, but the way that most people will deal with, well, and I have a defense video on the YouTube channel as well because I really hate being where she's at. But most of the time what happens is when I catch this position, I'm usually going to go after this arm. Okay, so I go after the near side arm and I start attacking it. Here, Kimura, straight arm lock, or Americana. Okay, now let's turn this direction a little bit. Now what happens, what we teach folks to do here is to protect this arm. So what Mandy's going to do is bury that elbow on the floor. She's going to switch her hips to face my legs. Okay, now if I can't dig this arm out and attack it, and she's able to untie my legs. I don't know if I've gone through this with you before, have I? I have? No, okay. So let's just pretend. You guys go watch the video later. It's on the YouTube channel. Okay, let's pretend she knows how to escape the position, okay, and my legs come undone. All right, now I could just give up, and now at some point she's going to get her head out, and she's going to turn to face me, and then she's going to climb up, and she's going to get a better side control position, okay? So at this point, once I recognize that my legs are going to open and I can't dig this arm out to attack it, I have to abandon ship. I've got to find the next best option for me. Now, what's I think most intuitive, okay, for most people, when they escape and they get out here like this and they stay low, they try to slide up, okay, most people are going to try to do this and put them back in the guard. But if she grabs inside my leg and lifts it up, and she keeps the knee closed, she's going to block that. Okay, so it's going to be difficult for me to get back to my guard. Not impossible, but it's going to be difficult. Okay, so really what it comes down to is where I can make my frames. Because when we are here, okay, and let's say she defends and she escapes, okay, right now I have frames here, okay? I want my arms here, all right? Most of the time when they feel this, they're going to try to move the hips north first. Okay, so walk your body up. Yep, good. Okay, and then they're going to try to adjust the upper body. Okay, so you have to decide, depending on where they're at, how they dealt with the position in the first place, and what they're doing with their arms. Once I get free from here, am I going to frame against this and fight this way, or am I going to frame against this and fight this direction? Okay, now this is a little bit counterintuitive, but let's scoot this one in. Okay, so what I would say is if I know I'm losing this, okay, unless I'm fighting for all this stuff and she gets her head free, is I'm going to frame here. Okay, now a lot of times what she's going to do, she's going to block my hip with her right hand, come on the other side, and she's going to move her hips north. Okay, so I can't block both necessarily, okay, and still be able to move my hips. So what I would do here is I would frame or grab the gi right here, and I would come here and I'm gonna press into the floor with both my feet. Okay, so if I can't put her back in the guard, I'm gonna frame. I bring this elbow out, and I use this. It's almost like a pole vault, right? You stick that in the floor and you drive pressure, and your body's gonna come up. Pulling myself up like this is difficult, especially when they start walking their body up. But if I push it to the floor, I can push my hips up. Now I'm gonna stretch this as hard as I can. I'm gonna shoot my hips back and come here, okay? Let's come back this direction a little bit. Now, at some point, okay, let's say they feel this, I frame as hard as I can against the armpit. I'm just grabbing the material here. You can grab the elbow too, but here, a lot of you guys already know this escape. So I'm gonna come here, I push my hips up. As she continues to walk her hips around, I'm gonna come up to my knees. And I'm gonna take this arm and I sit through. Okay, and then we can come out like this. If she stays like this, I'm gonna arm lock her here. If she rolls over, I'm gonna end up on top. Okay, so, I know it's your first time doing this, so you're doing great, doing great. All right, some of these positions are a little bit complex and she hasn't learned them yet. Okay, but you've been here before. You've done this move before. This one.
I don't think I've ever been here.
Really? Well, I'm not attacking you properly, apparently. All right, so I'm failing. I'm doing a terrible job. So switch your hips to face my legs. So let's say she escapes this position. I'm gonna frame, lock this arm out, dig my feet into the floor, drive my shoulder up off the mat. Okay. Now, depending on what happens, she continues to walk around me. I'm gonna switch my hips, and I'm gonna gather this arm up. Okay. So she keep coming, keep coming, keep coming. Come up. I'm gonna take this arm out. I set this leg through, and I'm gonna drive. I keep my elbow tight. I drop my elbow, my knee together, and I'm gonna just roll with it here. And now when I end up here, let's spin around, show them where we landed. Turn this way. Keep spinning, keep spinning. I ended up here. This is a lot of pressure. I'm sorry. Okay. I put my weight on my elbow. I drive here. My hips are off the mat. So if I stay here long enough, her arm's gonna go numb, okay? So I'm gonna take this here, pin it down, and now we're gonna arm lock here, okay? So, and there's a number of things you can do after the fact, but really it's a judgment call on whether I can frame against the hip effectively to shrimp crawl away and put them back in the guard, or depending on what they're doing with their hips and their body, frame against the armpit, stretch, drive, come up on your elbow, and then follow with whatever they do at that point. If you can come up with the elbow and just shoot your hips back and put them back in the guard, that's great. If not, go up, don't hang out in the turtle, but wrap that arm up, sit through right away and roll them, okay? So, hi Jeff, how you doing? All right, what's up? Randy Berger. All right, so how we doing on time? We got here.
We are at 6:30.
Right on. Okay.
Stephen also asked about how do you do the hip throw under pressure?
The hip throw under pressure. I would need more information on that, Stephen. I'm sorry, I'm not quite understanding. If you'd like, if you can either demonstrate by video or send me I guess I would need more information as far as what hip throw you're talking about and what pressure you're talking about. If they're driving towards me or something like that, or maybe even shoot me or send me a video of somebody doing it, and then I can hopefully answer that. So I think we're doing good. Randy Watson, yes sir. All right.
Do you have time for the counter to the over-under pass, or do you want to address that later?
So, yeah, so there's a lot there. Okay, so the over-under pass, it really kind of goes in, I'll show you my favorite, okay? And yeah, so first I'm going to demonstrate the over-under pass, at least at a base level, okay? So over-under pass requires you to control the bottom leg, okay? Now, my favorite way of doing that is bringing the elbow over top, right? Or bringing the shoulder over top of the elbow. Now, the best way to finish this pass is to make sure their hips stay flat. So I'm under, and I'm here like this, okay? Now, there's good and bad things about this top leg being up or down like this, okay? So I can do an over-under pass like this where I have her foot bound up. There's some good about this, okay? There's some bad as well as far as a follow-up technique, okay? So the question was more about how to defend it. The counter to it, okay? All right, so there's the most basic counter to this is this. Here, let's come. And I think Justin already knows this particular counter, so it might not be the one that he's talking about. I'll show you my favorite one. So if you come underneath, grab the belt. So keep your head on this side. You want to keep my hips flat, but bring your body weight over top of this elbow here. Good. Okay. Now, what happens here like this? Okay, the most basic escape here is to push your hips up, push the head across, and then make space. Frame, make space, and get your legs back in the game. So they're not controlling your hips anymore. Okay. Now, there are some easy counters to that for her as well. Now, my favorite is to grab this sleeve here like this, okay? And as they're bearing down on me here like this, what I'm doing, I can't lift her like this. My leg's not in a strong angle to deal with this here. And especially if gets her weight over top of this, she's locked my leg in, and I can't get this leg out, all right? Now, what I can do is I can pull on this elbow as tight as I can, and I'm gonna swing this leg. Okay, so this is gonna bind up on her shoulder. I swing this leg like this, and you'll see what happened, all right? She kind of fell over a little bit. So it's putting this leg in a stronger angle. She wants to keep me flat, keep your head on this side. There we go. So I'm gonna grab here. If you can only grab the sleeve, grab the sleeve, but I like grabbing the elbow. And I'm gonna kick this down. Now this leg is in a stronger angle, okay? Now, if you wanna turn this into a sweep, let's turn this direction a little bit, okay? Right now, my foot is stuck underneath her far leg. If you can lift up for a second so they can see, now my foot is down here like this, stuck underneath her leg. That's good for me to a certain degree. It can be bad if she decides she wants to knee bar me, okay? But what I like to do here is that even if I don't have that foot where that's at, I'll reach underneath and I grab the far side leg, pant leg. So if you can sit up just for a second so they can see what I'm grabbing. I like to grab inside here, okay? And I'm gonna pull that as I tip her over, okay? So I'm gonna come here like this. I'm gonna hold this sleeve tight here. I grab the pants here. I kick this hard here and I tip. And now, when I pull this towards me, she has a choice to make, okay? If she wants to take the sweep, if she just wants to lay down and keep a hold of this foot, I'll bring my foot inside and I'll push that shoulder to the floor, and then I'll find a way to come up. It becomes a sloppy mess, but it doesn't matter. You're gonna get on top, okay? You're dealing with the pass. Now, if some people will take this bait, okay? If I swing this down, a lot of times they'll swing this leg back for base. Catch, swing, leg back, yes. Which gives me the triangle, okay? So that's typically, if I can't push the head across, that's typically where I'm gonna go next. I don't want the person to get down that low in the first place. You know, sometimes it's very difficult in the moment to peel that arm out and fight the arm, but not impossible either. So if you have early preventions, it's better. You don't want them inside controlling, getting heavy on the hips and the leg. People who are really good at that pass, it's a lot to deal with, okay? So, and sometimes the best thing you can do is force them into changing angles and trying to make an attempt on the other side, which movement will create movement and allow you the opportunity to get back to where you can get your knees involved in the game. And if you can get your knees involved in the game, then you may make enough space to get your feet involved in the game. Now you're getting back to a better position. So I hope that answered the question somewhat effectively. At least it gives you some options. So I think we're gonna have to cut it off here pretty soon. We got, unless there's no other questions, we're about 35 minutes. So we like to keep these a little bit under 40 minutes, ideally under 30, but I talk too much. So unless you guys have any other questions, and if you do, if we missed you, please join us Saturday at noon. We're gonna do another one Saturday at noon Eastern Standard Time. And if you have any questions, you can write them in the comments here or just show up then and throw them down, and hopefully we can get to them and just spend some more time with you all. So I hope everybody enjoyed it. Great to see you all. Well, not really seeing you. Great for you to see us. And yeah, we appreciate doing this.
Good to see me.
Good to see me. All right. Okay. So, all right, guys. That's it. Thank you for joining us. We will see you Saturday. Take care.